writing a comic or graphic novel can help you get your movie made. That's true. And we're just going to talk about comic books and films and how the Venn diagram of how they overlap and all that. So let's first start at the far end. Please, please introduce yourself, a little bit of your background, and why I asked you to sit on this panel.
Thanks, Dave. I'm so happy you started with the one guy who doesn't have a comic book.
There's a reason he's here.
So I'm Dwight Cenac. A little bit of background, I was in the film industry for a long time. I was an actor. Nobody had hired me, so then I became a director and made movies and hired myself. And nobody watched them, so then I kind of quit. Then I found myself back into the family entertainment space, making a board game. It's called High Noon. It's upstairs. You can go check it out. You can play a bit if you want. In the process of doing that, it was really about building a universe and a brand. And I had a plan for a bigger vision than just on the board. I wanted a whole bunch of entertainment mediums, books, comic books, movies, TV shows. And so this year, I set my New Year's resolution to finish a novel based around the universe of my board game by the end of January, and I did it. So now I have a novel expanding the IP of High Noon, and I hope
TV pilot that's in development.
I didn't know if I was allowed to talk about that.
Well, we can, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So because of all this, we now have. How deep into this am I allowed to go, Dave?
Who knows? When have we played it straight? We were open during the pandemic. Just whatever.
So I knew there's a huge universe, a bunch of stories there, and I knew that there was one guy to tell that in the visual medium, and that was my good friend Dave DeBoer.
Well, I didn't know you were going to... Okay, yes, that's true.
You said go over!
I didn't.
So in the form of nepotism, I said, hey, buddy. And we're working on a TV pilot, and we are getting into that. And so here I am to talk about that side of the space.
All right, comic books. Now a real comic book first. Sorry.
Actually, I'm only semi-real, but close enough. Actually, I started out...
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Name.
Oh, name. Craig Whedon. And he's semi-real. And actually, I started out writing a lot and publishing a lot of poetry. Just put it below. Okay. I told you, semi-real. It's stepping towards reality now. But in any case, started out writing and publishing a lot of poetry, finally decided nobody reads poetry, transferred into fiction, and did a lot of technical writing, and one guy I was writing financial planning books for, started telling me this incredible story about what had happened to him in his real life, and he had been a sports agent and an agent for mixed martial artists. And it was such an unbelievable story. I said, as many of the writers here probably did, oh, that should be a movie. And that was my first screenplay. And ultimately I went on and wrote a bunch of screenplays and fiction and stuff, and I ended up bouncing around. My day job was residential construction. And I learned along the way that being a general contractor is a lot like being a producer and trying to make a film come together. And anyway, I ended up in Clearwater teaching in the St. Pete College there in Clearwater, and I was doing a screenwriting workshop, and this guy over here showed up one semester. And I noticed that we all had mini introductions, and he said he wrote comic books. And turns out at the end of the semester, he called me up and said, hey, you want to go to lunch? And since then, we've done 7 screenplays, and I brought copies if we do a show and tell thing of our latest graphic novel, which is a 3-shot, they call it, 3 comic books that tell one story. And next thing I knew, we ended up here.
That's good. I'm Jimmy Palmiotti. I work in comic books full-time. I've started at Marvel Comics. I started a line of books called Marvel Knights with a partner, Joe Quesada, when Marvel was in Chapter 11, believe it or not. It was in Chapter 11 at one point. I also self-published with a company called Event Comics, where we did a character, Painkiller Jane, which became a sci-fi movie, then became a sci-fi series, and I still actually work on the character. I've also worked for my own company with my wife, Amanda Cano. We have a company called Paper Films, which we basically crowdfund most of our books. So we do like 4 to 5 campaigns a year. We crowdfund them, and then I give them to an agent on the West Coast and say, if you can sell it, great. If you don't, I don't care. My job is to make a great comic book. All the other stuff comes later. Yeah, I've been doing it for many years. I've had, most recently, during the pandemic, I had a book I worked on with Justin Gray called Random Acts of Violence, and it came out as a movie during the pandemic, greatest time to come out as a movie. It played in 2 drive-in theaters in the United States during the pandemic. One in Miami and one I don't even know where.
But it killed in those 2
drive-in. It killed, it murdered. It was, but I got to work, I got to work with Jay Baruchel, and Jay directed it. He fell in love with the comic and pursued it, and we went up there, and I was one of the producers on the film. And yeah, so Craig and I write a lot of stuff together. We've had a couple of films. Things bounce around. You write a lot of stuff, and you get deals, and then they drop out. I think the last one we had, there was Painkiller Jane a couple of more times, and over the years anyway, I've worked for Marvel and DC. The last big thing I worked on was Harley Quinn for DC Comics with my wife. And because of the success of that, Margot Robbie became Harley Quinn based on our character. That was a pretty cool thing to happen. I've had other comics that were made into movies that I worked on, like Jonah Hex, that I wasn't too crazy about the movie, but whatever.
Nobody was crazy about it.
No, nobody was. Well, Josh Brolin was excited while it was being shot. But other than that, yeah, so basically my full-time job is just making comics and the best I can, and then and if I'm lucky enough, I have a second life at times.
Hey, but before we get to Tony, so you were working with DC, so I have to ask this. Did you ever cross paths with Megan Fitzmartin? She writes Robin, and she's a former student. That's why I was like...
I haven't. I might have met her like at a hello at a con, but I don't know her very well.
She's now doing all the comic book stuff because she's like the Robin author.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Anyway, if you meet her, just tell her I said hi.
I will.
All right, Tony.
Yeah, so I guess most everyone here knows me as the film festival guy since I started this festival 19 years ago, and either as the film commissioner, thank you, small applause right there, as the film commissioner here for almost 9 years, and now film commissioner in Dallas, but part of what I've done also for 20 years is a filmmaker, and so I had a number of films that I've either directed or wrote or produced, some theatrical released, some direct to, streaming platforms or whatever else over the years, and in that whole time period, I also grew up a huge comic book fan, so I started collecting comics, as a kid in the 80s. And
I had a dear friend named
the superhero, yeah, exactly. And if you ever end up on a Zoom call and I'm in my home office, you will see a whole bunch of comic book long boxes behind me holding 5,000 Marvel comics, if I don't blur the background out. So, comic book nerd since, very young age. And I had one particular project called Terminal Kill that I worked on for, at this point now, nearly 20 years to get made. Shot it as a TV pilot in 2011. Amazon was looking at it in 2013, decided they'd rather do kid shows and comedies, and retooled it as a feature script. That feature script was a finalist in Screencraft's action screenplay competition, which Screencraft widely considered one of the top 3 screenplay competitions in the world. And 2020, I was going to shoot it, and my pandemic version is that Christina Ricci was attached to star in it, along with Tom Hopper from Umbrella Academy, David Dastmalchian, all very great actors. And then the pandemic happened, and the movie didn't. So I went on the process of trying to recast and have my casting director. And at one point, Dwight and I were in Munich, Germany, at Oktoberfest, drinking a lot. and
That doesn't sound like
yeah,
you guys.
and
Is there
just
a point to this?
yes, I'm getting there. It all circles around. It all circles around.
And there was beer.
My
And,
apologies.
what were you saying?
But then at that point, you know, I thought it's like, man, all the money that I've spent on this casting director, I could have just made a graphic novel at this point. And so I'm doing the reverse, taking a project that was going to be a feature film and turning graphic novel. And I literally just sent the order to the printer this week, and my proof is arriving at my house today for a 216-page graphic novel, and it's a 7-issue limited series as well. And so I ran a Kickstarter campaign, and
I backed it.
yes, those gentlemen here did, and so excited to now get this out into the world with the goal of now use this graphic novel as a pitch tool to go back to film.
It's almost like Little Shop of Horrors. It's like it was this crappy little movie, then it turned into a musical, then the musical turned into a movie musical. Okay, so before we get started, in case there's anyone here who hasn't come to one of these panels yet, I'll ask a couple of questions, and then please have some questions for our panelists, and I'll probably want to get to that earlier rather than later. All right, but first me. First question. What's your approach to writing, a scene to be visual? Forget like the big picture. Let's drill down a little bit. What's your approach to writing a visual scene? Obviously, comics, graphic novels, clearly they're very visual. So what's your approach to that? How do you? No, I'm starting with you.
Oh, I was going to say, start with Jimmy. He's the real person.
No. Well, you're going to get them warmed up, and then we're going to go to anyway. So Tony, how do you write a visual scene for a comic book? What's your process?
Well, for me, I already had a screenplay, and so it was a matter of converting that screenplay into a comic book format, which I was, even though I had collected and been a fan for many years, had never done before. And so, but I figured, I can figure this out. I'm a writer, but trying to figure out sort of that page by page, panel by panel breakdown. It's like, here's my scene description in the screenplay. Now, how do I describe that in page 1, panel 2, panel 3, like what I want to happen? And so I'd literally just take the screenplay and copy and pasting from the screenplay, but breaking it into chunks into the panels that I wanted to do. So probably a little bit different process than, what other writers do with that.
Yeah, so when I'm writing something, I'm there. I'm in the room. It's all choreographed. It's all, and what I do is
just to drill down. You say you're in the room. You mean like creatively you're in that
creatively
scene?
I'm in that space.
Okay,
If I'm
got
writing, if it's a Western and it's in the barn, I'm inside the barn. I'm trying to figure out the best way that I can shoot this where it would communicate what I'm trying to get across. So either it's most dramatic, or in comics you always start with an establishing shot, just like film. And so I kind of see it. I see what I'm doing. And again, the dialogue for me, I hear it while I'm writing it. I type out I write down the dialogue shorthand, because this is what I'm trying to get across in the scene. What's the best way I can look at this? So you're a director at that point, or DP, trying to figure out the best way to shoot it. And I'm in the place, so I know the limitations. If it's a fight scene in an elevator, obviously we have the 4 walls. But the same thing with a barn, the same thing with a house or a building. I see the limitations of the space, and then at the same time I see the opportunities of the space and how the characters can interact with it. So when I'm writing, I see the whole thing. And based on what artists I'm working with, I either have to give a lot of information or description, or if it's somebody I've worked with before, they know my shorthand. Like my wife is drawing it, I know she'll do a better job than me anyway.
Wait, your wife draws?
Yeah, she's right there in the corner there. There you go. Yeah, it's Amanda Connor. She's
And Amanda, do you want to join us up here? No pressure, but...
Woman.
Come on up.
You'll be the lone voice of reason up here.
That's it.
Pretty up the panel.
Yeah, pretty up. That's right, pretty up the
Why didn't
panel.
we think of
Nice.
that before? Thank you for joining me.
So let's do the Amanda.
Yeah, let's just go to Amanda.
Thank you. I'm Amanda Connor. Thank you. And I write sometimes, but I always would rather be drawing. I draw comics, all sorts of comics. I started at Marvel. No, yes, I did. I started at Marvel. That was my first gig way back when. And yeah, Jimmy and I, our last huge project together was Harley Quinn.
You started doing Barbie though, right? That was
No, actually, my first job ever was a Yellow Jacket story for Marvel. Yeah.
You mean Yellow Jacket, the TV?
Hank Pym.
And, well,
Oh,
it was,
my,
it was the hot second that Yellow Jacket was female. So yeah, I did that. Yeah, that was my first job ever. Yeah.
Well, then I'm going to direct the question to you then, as an artist. So, what do you need from the writer? This is so cool that we have her. What do you need from the comic book writer for you to give an outstanding panel? What do you need?
I like to have information. I like to have like good, juicy information, like where everything is taking place and how the characters are acting and reacting. And it makes it my favorite thing to do is body language and facial expressions. And the more information I can get about how the characters are feeling at that moment, the more I can run with it. So that's my thing. That's what I want. I want to know how, first and foremost, where they are and what's going on, but how they're feeling and how they're reacting.
So just real quick, as a practical matter, you want a Word document, short paragraphs, each paragraph has a focus, and then that's how you digest it, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a comic book script and a movie script, they're similar, but they're different. And, like you guys were saying, there's an establishing shot, and then there's subsequent panels after that. Some writers are really, really tight with their scripts, and they want each and everything, like they will describe everything down to like the pencil on the table in the room, and then other ones will just be like, okay, they're in the room and this is what they're saying. So it ranges from, and there's another thing, it's called Marvel style. I don't know if they do it anymore, but back in the day, Marvel used like Stan Lee he wouldn't even give you a script. He would just give you sort of a rough plot and let you run with it. So, but I prefer a tighter style than Marvel style. So, because I like to know what's going on in each panel. Sometimes I'll even add panels if I can get some better reactions. The characters, they're my actors. So I want to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to get everything across.
All right. You know what? Before I move on with my questions, does anyone have a question out there? Oh, right here. Where's
The magic catch.
Yeah, where's the cube of power?
Coming down.
By the way, it has our logo on it. If you
That's
guys
so
have
cool.
noticed, so it's very fancy.
Hello. I
Hello.
my question. How do you use your graphic novel as a pitching tool to get your feature or TV show made? I have a graphic novel that I'm working on. Actually, I just finished writing a comic, but I have a graphic novel that I want to pitch as either a series or a television, or either as a television series or a feature. But how do you need a pitch deck for that as well as a graphic novel, or is a graphic novel enough to, pitch, I guess?
So if your graphic novel is something that has a beginning, middle, and end, that helps. A lot of time people do world building and they tell me, yeah, I have this idea, and those 10 issues you read are now only 1/8 of my idea, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm never, So you kind of have to do world building quickly, get your idea out quickly in a graphic novel, and then once you have it, there's a couple of things, right? How are you going to sell it? How are you going to get it out to the general audience? Are you going to give it to people on social media? You're going to sell it through Kickstarter or crowdfunding? Or do you have an agent or somebody that can take the graphic novel around? A pitch deck doesn't hurt to have with your graphic novel. Obviously, that's another tool to sell it. But I always say focus on the graphic novel first and make sure it's killer. And then after that, you just have to get it out to the public. You have to either bring it to a publisher, publish it yourself, Or you can put a PDF online for free and send it to everybody you've ever met, you know, and hope for the best. I mean, that's basically it, you know, that there is no really other sneaky thing, unless you have a cousin or an uncle. If you live in Hollywood and you have somebody related to you, they can usually get it in people's eyes. But we have to do it the hard way, so I always say hit social media, talk about, if it's based on some story of your life, or it's based on a time or a place, find people that have these things in common and share the information with them, and eventually get them to talk about it out loud and hopefully get somebody's attention.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else before we move? Yeah.
Hey, so what if there's a graphic novel that you're like, oh, this would be such a good idea. I want to produce that. I want to get that. How do you go about approaching the person who published it in order to turn it into a feature or a series?
So you're saying you're the person looking for material?
Yes.
And you see the graphic novel?
Yes.
Okay, so usually, they usually have a social media something. If you look at a book, you usually see the person, you find social media. So you just reach out and say, hi, you send a message, or you say, hey, I'm a producer, I'm a director, I work here, I work there. I had for a thing I worked on called Monolith, I got a raw phone call from a guy named Erwin Stoff, who's like a big producer in Hollywood. And he just called me in for 10 minutes trying to tell me he's the real thing. Go look up IMDb. While I was on the phone with him, and he was producing like movies with Tom Cruise. It's just a random guy. He called me, and we got to talking, and you know, we had some business with each other. But it's pretty easy to find the people if you have the graphic novel. And if worse comes to worse, then find out who the publisher is, and eventually they will forward an email from you. Okay.
Good. Yep.
This is such a cool way to
Soft.
deliver the microphone. I love this.
Yeah. The cube of power, or destiny. What do we land on? Destiny, right?
Cube of power. As I understand, you said you do up to 4 crowdfunding books a year. So my question is, I'm an author, I write books, I've never crowdfunded anything, traditional books, kind of frowned upon. But if you're doing this as a business model, is that one like company that's creating 4 different crowdfunding opportunities, or have you got multiple companies over a year? How are you managing that?
It's just me. It's just me and a buddy, and well, we do the work. We put the book together, and then we go on like Kickstarter or Indiegogo and say, hey, this is the idea we have. We need to raise this much money to make the book, and if we raise that much money, we send you the book. So it's very grassroots type of publishing. I publish it myself. Everyone gets it, and then then I usually wait a couple of years, and then I will go to a publisher and say, hey, would you like to publish this with a different cover or something? I make sure the Kickstarter people have their thing, but I do it myself. I do it out of I have an office in the back of a comic shop in Clearwater.
So you have just Schedule C that you're just reporting the income and the expenses from?
Oh, I don't tell the government anything. Are you kidding me? Why would you do that? No, it's everything's on the books, and yeah, so when you work with like something like Kickstarter or something like that, they give you 1099s, it's W4s. You hire people, so you have to obviously pay them, and you have to keep a paper trail of everything. But if I'm doing most of this stuff, I pay myself. I have my own company, so it's an S corp, and I pay myself a salary.
Okay.
And it's a really crappy salary. But I give myself bonuses at the end of the year that are pretty good.
What about a Christmas party at the end of the year? Is that in it?
Yeah, I hit on myself in the back. Yeah, sure, it's great. No, but it's basically grassroots publishing. I'm creating the Craig and I just did a thing called Fantasima. Craig gets to do show and tell while Craig is here.
And I supported that one as well.
Thank you, appreciate it. But we literally used a publisher in Fort Myers to print the book, and if you guys want to pass it around, you can't roll it up and smoke it, but you can look at it. But you do it yourself, and you hope you find an audience. And what I did is because I've been in the comic field, I had a name, so people backed it. But for people who don't have that, I always say it's great if you have cousins or a lot of friends, because your friends will back you, and they'll spread the word in social media. And Tony, right? It's friends, right? People came.
Yeah, so I started putting the book together, and I didn't want to. I knew I would do a Kickstarter campaign at some point, but I didn't want to do the campaign to raise the money to make the book, because I knew that would take a long time. And so what I started doing is making the book first and then do the campaign, so that when I launched it, I would say, hey, the book's almost done. This money that I'm raising is primarily for the printing and distribution of the thing. Because it took over a year to do the 216 pages. And so I don't want to run a Kickstarter campaign and then make people wait a year or a year and a half before they get it. I wanted to be able to turn it out right away. And so fortunately, I'm good with money, and I save money, and I self-funded basically the entire thing. And I'll just be upfront. So I raised $10,000 on Kickstarter. The book cost me $35,000 to make. So I'm 25 out of pocket, and Jimmy's laughing at me.
Yeah, well.
Because I should have asked him for more advice.
Yes, I wish he would have called me. But at the same time, it's done.
Yeah.
And there's a certain satisfaction. You're investing in yourself. The best. Yeah. Listen, no matter how much money, big or small, investing in yourself is the smart way to go. So I don't pick on that.
Right on yourself. All right. Oh, good.
Yeah, and I don't mind that I spent it. I wanted to. Like, the whole point is, I spent that much on a casting director for a movie. It's the same amount I spent on a casting director for a film that got nothing. And so now I spent the same money I spent on the casting director for a year and a half, and I have a 216-page piece of intellectual property that, if nothing ever happens with it, my friend that I did it honor his memory of his death, it honors his memory.
All right, I want to go to Dwight for a second. So you have this game that's playing all over. You can only use one. No, I don't want you to use both. You can only use one. Anyway, okay, so you have this this board game, High Noon, that sells literally all over the world. It's Australia, et cetera, et cetera. It's everywhere. And
Because of Kickstarter, by the way.
Because of Kickstarter.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw this out there. I'm sorry to throw that up, but there was something that was said, and I don't know if I heard it incorrectly, and not to recharge on the conversation, but there's nothing frowned upon. But there's actually only two things frowned upon in Kickstarter or crowdfunding. One of those is large companies that don't actually need it, but they'll still get backed. Like, people may frown upon it as they give them their money.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves is over $1 million.
Yeah, Sylvester Stallone did a comic.
Right.
Yeah, and I in my regard, like, and I follow a lot of independent comics, the comic artists that do it. They're very common in the line of board games as well. But the other one is taking the money and running. Those are the only two things that are really frowned upon in crowdfunding. Outside of that, it's great for your marketing. It's great to grow your following. It's great for a lot of things. So.
And I wasn't implying
Okay.
there was anything wrong. I'm just saying, in the world of novels, there's a different school of thought.
I think that's changing, though. That's what I guess what I'm getting at is a crowdfunding is becoming very much a norm. It's a way for independents to self-publish, no matter what they're doing. So whether it's novels, which I'm with you, like I wrote a novel, and or comics, or board games, or anything that, or films. Films are getting crowdfunded. Like, everything is getting crowdfunded, and it's fantastic because it's bringing power to the people. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, so you took great care to create the mythology of a very large universe for your board game. You took great care to hire artists to create the actual characters, very cinematic and also very high-end comic book look. So that, one of the reasons why you're on this panel is because you did create a bunch of characters that could easily go on the pages of a graphic novel. Like, that's how they're drawn, and then you're working on the pilot. You wrote that book. So my question is, or just talk about, you created all these characters, you created a universe. What is your process for taking all this massive amount of data, characters, through lines that you've created for the board game, and trying to sort of like siphon that down into a coherent, compelling story, like maybe in the novel or TV show, and you did work on a graphic novel, you were developing.
Yeah, the plan was actually to release a graphic novel with the game. And the graphic novel was supposed to end with the scenario that the game starts out with. So you start the game at the end of the final chapter of the graphic novel. Of course, that didn't happen.
So how do you distill all that massive amount of data, characters, world into a coherent, what's your process for that? Just sort of honing, pulling it in.
Oh my gosh. I don't know.
Well, that's what this panel is for.
I don't know is a great answer. Is an actual answer.
Yeah, no, I mean, we all have a story to tell. And so I'll tell you, I can tell you how I broke down the novel, which revolves around 4 of the teams within the game, and it explores the universe. And how I did that was I followed story structure. I followed the hero's journey. I took there's a bunch of pre-written. It's not like you're reskinning an existing book, but the hero's journey is a formula, and if you follow it, it works. If you don't follow it and you create like Jane Doe's or John Doe's or whatever the other one is, where they're just perfect in every way and there's no evolution whatsoever because you don't know how to follow story structure, then it doesn't matter what you write or what it's going to be about or how you write it, whether it's a book or a comic book or a movie or whatever, it's not going to work. So I knew that I wanted to make an epic. I wanted this book to be a Western epic. My next book is going to be a superhero movie. It's going to be a superhero story in the West. So it will follow the hero's journey. But this one was a Western epic. So I followed I channeled into Sergio Leone's films. I was like, Once Upon a Time in the West. How did that flow? It kind of started and then it had a middle and then it had an end. So I structured the key points. I was like, I know in this point this needs to happen. At this point this needs to happen. I know it needs to end here, and I just forced myself to write within those parameters. That's the best. I mean, that's the best answer I can give you.
Craig, I'm giving you the same question basically, except without the board game thing. You're a screenwriter who then went into the comic book world. How do you take that, story data and sort of put it into panels and that kind of thing? What's your process?
Process is think about it and then do it. Pretty simple. And I don't want to overcomplicate things because I know I subscribe to too many newsletters online and you get all this advice. My advice to everyone watching is delete about 95% of those subscriptions because it's just overwhelming. So yes, you need a structure and you need just to know where you're going. When Jimmy and I work together, we sit down and talk about it. Okay, this is the story. What do we want to have happen? Oh, this will happen then. Oh, if that happens, then we can do this. All right. Why don't you go do 5 pages and I'll do the next 5? Okay, we come back, take it from there. I mean, I've been around the screenwriting biz for quite a while, and I think it gets overcomplicated. When I step back and look at it, and you just gotta trust yourself, let yourself go. I mean, the points, and you were talking earlier about Save the Cat, having a structure or learning some idea of that, or the hero's journey, great to know, but don't read every last article that you get in the email because you'll never have time to write. One thing I do want to point out on a technical level, because I know a lot of you are screenwriters, one of the great differences is if you're doing a screenplay, one of the cardinal rules is do not give too many camera directions, and you learn little tricks how to tell the director what you want them to focus on, all these little things, but you can't say close up, basically. Well, if you're writing a script for a comic or a graphic novel, it's exactly the opposite. You are the director. When we write our scene descriptions, we say where the camera is. Is it a low angle? Is it up angle? Who's in the foreground? You are the director. So if you've got that impulse, go do your graphic novels and let it go. I mean, you're directing every single thing. And so that's the huge difference. Screenplay, no camera. Graphic novel, it's all camera, because it's visual. It's what you got there.
That's a really good note. Yeah, it's a great comparison. I'm going to go back to the questions in 1 second, but I have, you guys can also answer this, but I want to start with Tony. You have a really strong central character with high stakes. So maybe I'm already answering the question, but how do you create a compelling character for a comic book series or for a graphic novel?
Well, I was going to say, well, I would say, you know, I already had it created for the film, right, for the screenplay, and it had gone through many iterations to get where it was, and so it was already good. And I let other people tell me it was good. I didn't just be like, I'm a magnificent writer. And once I get other people that I didn't know and sending it off for coverage, and you know, people who don't know you come back, and it comes back, you know, 8 out of 10 recommends and all that kind of stuff. You're like, oh, okay, I guess I did something here. But I would say, and so I wanted to direct this to Amanda. Actually, is like when I was converting this into screenplay format, and to your point, if you're the director, but at the same time the artist is the cinematographer, and so like I would put something down, and my artist would shoot me a text or something. He'd be like, this should be 3 or 4 panels instead of the 1 panel that you did here, and I'd be like, you're the pro, go for it. And I don't think he was milking me for more money, because this went from like a 90-page book to 216. But it was he knew what he was doing, and he knew that I squeezed too much into the panels because I was writing like a screenplay person instead of writing more for a comic book format. And so the question to you is like how you work, you know, talking about Marvel method, but that's how I worked with my cinematographer / artist.
I've had writers that have put and this is when I was first starting, and I didn't, you know, I was a little bit shy, and I didn't want to ask the writer, hey, I want to put more panels in here, or even the editor. I would just try and do whatever I could to make it work, but I had a writer that had the character doing like 5 different things in 1 panel, and I'm like, I can't do this, you know, it was not possible, like physics does not work this way. So I called up the editor. I'm like, I really need to make this happen in 2 more panels. And he's like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. And but now, like, and I rarely get them anymore. But you know, if I do get a panel that has too many things happening in it, I will just throw extra panels in there. I won't even ask. You know, if they have a problem with it, you know, give me a call. But yeah, I mean, I'm confident enough now that I can just like, this works better this way.
Do the 2 of you work together frequently?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
a lot.
I figured.
Yes, yeah.
That's a whole nother panel.
Does he get cranky? Does Jimmy get cranky? Wait, no, don't.
Here's the thing. Occasionally we both think we're right, and that's when it gets.
I lovingly call her an asshole once in a while. It's lovingly, I swear.
I love that you're pantomiming, rubbing your back.
Yeah.
He does, and I crack up because nobody else calls me an asshole, so it just like makes me laugh.
It's done out of. All right, let's get back to the questions of the audience. Where's the cube of power? Right here. This handsome devil in the floral. No, right here, over here. Yeah.
Oh, God.
I can't believe. You know what? Stick to writing.
Can I speak on this?
You're all good.
Yeah, I'd just be interested to know the relationship between the number of pages in my script, my screenplay script, and the number of pages that will result in a graphic novel. But how does that work?
Okay, so you know, a script, you can have 100 horses come over the mountain and start shooting. And in a comic, you might need a couple more panels to pull that off, or you might kill the artist might kill themselves, saying I have to draw 100 horses now. You know, there's a lot of give and take, and especially since comic book pace. So in film, it's a page, a minute. You know, you can say 90-page script somehow in the zone of a 90-minute movie. Right. With comics, its pacing is differently, right? So there's information that needs to be processed and given to the reader. And in film, you know, you can have somebody say he was dead and have music and pull the camera back and have it start lightning. But in a comic, you have to kind of break that into a lot of panels. So there's a different kind of language spoken in comics and film. And whenever I work on comics, and Amanda will attest to this, I play movie soundtracks. And because I'm in it, I'm picturing this thing and I'm picking out my soundtrack. I'm like, oh, this sounds like a John Barry type scene. You know, it's a little romantic. It's a little, you know, so all those shortcuts in film aren't there in comics. We don't get to see the quirks. It takes time to develop these things. And again, back to the last question. When you have a character, you know, you have to be the dialogue and what they do defines everything. Same in film. But in the comics, in film, you can do shortcuts. It's like a guy can, you know, flick a cigarette. There's so much you can do. Flicking a cigarette in a comic could be 4 panels long, you know. So you have to kind of just rework it a little bit, and it, like Tony's.
If I could jump in there,
Right.
and you know, it just kind of struck me now in a comic book. They can't even have, like in a screenplay, you could describe how they're having their own thoughts, but the audience will never see that. But in a comic book, they can't even run from their thoughts because that'll...
Well, you can, so there's a thing called the caption in the top. So sometimes if there's 3 characters in a room, you can literally decide what color the caption will be, and that'll be given to that person. So you can have a caption and going, I want to kill myself, and then a dialogue of the person that goes, have a nice day. You know, and right away we get in that one panel, we get all the information we need about the scene. So there are shortcuts, and I would say the best school of learning comics is to read them, and you'll start to see these little shortcuts that are done. And again, the better the writer is, the better the comic, the better the artist is, and you need both, right? The art has to be brilliant, and the script has to be the same thing. They have to work together. But it is a different pacing. So I wrote 70 books that were 22 pages each. There's a Western. So beginning, middle, and end. If they ever made films of it or a TV show, it would probably have to be 45 minutes or an hour to get it across. But I was able to put it into 22 minutes because I learned all these creative shortcuts. So there is a different pacing, and it's just something that can be learned over time by looking at things.
All right, let's do some more questions. Let's go back up there. See a hand raised.
See how far you can throw it. There you go.
Although, you know what? Yeah, after he's done, we've been spending time over here. That gentleman, yeah, let's go to him next, but please.
How do you, after you've done with the writing and want to get an artist, how do you even estimate the cost for that artist to actually do the panels and everything? Because as you guys stated, it could possibly evolve going from, you know, however many panels to then the artist saying, no, I think it should go like this.
And so it's like any business has established artists, and they have a page rate. If you're going to use somebody new out of college and you like their work, it's probably going to be a lot cheaper. If they've never done a book, it's going to be really cheap. But you also pay for what you get. So you're talking on an average, just to give you an average, because in a comic book there's pencil, ink, and color. There's a couple of things to make one page. But if the artist does all of them, I'm going to say average, and on the lower end is around $500 a page. So if you're writing a 20-page book, you obviously know how much it's going to cost. And then you have to have a letterhead. It's a production thing you're asking about. But it's going to be, if you're going to hire Amanda, it's going to be like 3 times that, you know? And if you're going to hire some guy or gal coming out of college and they want to do their first book with you, I say you both have to have shared ownership, so both your hearts are into it, and then work together on it. So there's a lot of situations. That's a super, super long question. But I would say if you really want to get a feeling for it, find one of the big comic conventions and walk around Artist Alley and ask people their rates. That's the way a lot of people
Right,
do
but
it.
you had a bunch of characters created. What can you talk?
Also, Tony, where did you get that comic artist of yours?
Oh yeah, Dwight recommended him.
Oh,
Was that the guy who did your stuff?
No, Luke Stone, no. But I was going to get him to do my comic, but I fell on the sword so that, you know, Tony could have his.
Yeah, it was good. I don't know what he's going to do with himself now that I've used up his time for an entire year.
I don't know, maybe he's interested in doing Western. So I actually, I got my guys off Fiverr. Like that's where I went. And what was great was I had it was a blessing. But I had my character illustrator, I had my 3D artist, and then I had my map artist. And I've since kind of moved my map artist to do more of like weapons and equipment. He's really good at that. And when I first started, the guys on Fiverr, like you're gonna get there. It's Fiverr. You're gonna get what you pay for.
Is that like the number 5? Fiverr?
That's what it came from.
Okay.
Like it's a website, Fiverr with 2 R's.
Got it.
And they're usually really small, really cheap to do. So when I first got him, he was doing my character illustrations for like $15 a character. What? Yeah, but it looked like $15. There was a 3-year downtime after the Kickstarter where we went into production, and we were dealing with a lot of the COVID stuff, and the factory kept getting shut down, and so what should have taken 80 days took 3 years. And so in that time, I reached back out to him. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, I was actually thinking about you. I've been working on my craft for the last 3 years. I'd like to take a turn at those characters and redo them." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And he came out and like he grew. He was massively talented. Like when I got him, he was just starting out, and then he started getting picked up by a bunch of publishers. He started getting a lot of work. He honed his skills, and then I was like, "Hey, how about you just come work for me full time?" And I stole him on Discord. And so now he's my full-time artist. He's in the Philippines, but we always communicate, and I always give him just enough to keep working for me, but not enough to break my bank, but he's happy with it. So now my character art is somewhere around $60 a character illustration. If I want to do, in my game, there's illustrations of actual things happening. And so there is kind of a cinematic feel for that. It's not just a character. There's like the character's doing something, maybe fighting another character. And so for those, I paid maybe $125. And that's about what I paid, 60 to 120.
All right, let's any other, there we go, more questions. Yes, that gentleman right over there. Oh, wow.
10 points to Gryffindor.
It's not a brick.
So, I just wanted to ask, because I'm coming from more so the filmmaking side of this conversation, would it be easier to get a film or TV series picked up if you brought the pitch in the form of like a comic, even if it's something very bare bones, similar to like an animation storyboard? Like just to have the story complete on paper and have the visual establishment. Yeah. Is that something that would help with finding a producer and other filmmakers to help you on the project?
So the difference between like a comic and getting a script is people will read a comic quicker because they're lazy. It's simple. It's so simple, man. Throw a comic in the bathroom, somebody will pick it up and read it, right? Put a script in there, they might use it to other people. People are lazy, so you have to approach everything as if you're talking to somebody that's extremely lazy. That's why a pitch document sometimes is okay with a couple of illustrations and your idea. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes you can just put your concept into maybe 3 pages tops. I always say never go past that, right, Greg? Like 3 pages in. And then hire an illustrator to do 3 or 4 illustrations to give a little world building visual for them. And if they're not interested after that, then then you move on. But
you're already storyboard, hire an animator.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, but you can use illustrators for pitch docs, and some illustrators are pretty amazing these days, and that can get your whole idea across without having to invest in a full comic book. When you do a comic book, I always say you want to make a great comic. Don't do it for anything else, because if they pick it up or not, you have the great comic.
Okay.
But if you're making something just to get picked up, it's usually crap. It's usually your brain is elsewhere. Your brain is 2 steps away from the thing you should be focusing on, and therefore the book suffers. I find.
That could probably be said about screenplays as well. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you want to be rich, I want to be rich. I want to be rich.
If your focus isn't purely, at least in that process of I'm trying to tell a great story. Okay. What other questions? All right, let's go to him.
Just gonna gently hand it back.
Again.
Thank you all for being here. I've always loved storytelling, and I love many different forms of storytelling takes on. Film is what I love the most, but I also love novels, I love comics, and I know that between looking at what I've written, that if I have a 90-page screenplay that is a very simple, straightforward story, I could shoot it in St. Pete with people I know and a little crowdfunding. But I also have written a passion project, 3 feature-length screenplay fantasy story that I know if this is ever a movie one day, it's going to have to be when I really know people and have lots and lots of money. And so if with something like that, if it's like I really care about this story and I would love to see it exist no matter what, I feel like maybe I already know the answer from what you've already said, but is it almost better to just try to make something like a graphic novel and then you have the story no matter what, and then from that point, you could use that to pitch. But because I wrote it as a film trilogy, but I'm also well aware of the limitations of a budget.
Is it a story that you just love and you just have a passion for just getting it out of your brain?
Yeah, when I first wrote it, I felt like, okay, this is a screenplay, or these are films, and this is long down the road, if ever. But as time has gone on, I've thought about it, and I thought about things like novels and comics.
I mean,
it's gone more towards the direction of, get it out there.
Yeah, I mean, comics are a lot cheaper than films.
Yes.
I will say though, if it's epic, I would say write it as a novel and then have illustrations in the novel.
Yeah.
That might be the better way to do it, because if it's that much world building, you do comics, you're not going to be able to get to your whole world.
True.
Where if you write it as you take your screenplay and write it as a couple of novels, then you can have a beautiful cover. You can even have illustrations on the inside that kind of give some extra world building cues. And again, that's easy to give to somebody and say, hey, this. If you ever want to make a film out of this, here's what it is.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Good. All right, we up there. We haven't gone up top. Yes.
I did want to add real quick to that as I popped in back in at the end, since I got a little festival to run here, so I'm running in and out. That there's no special effects budget in a comic book. You want to blow as much stuff up as you want, you can blow it up, and you don't have to worry about it. And when you're making a film, when we were budgeting Terminal Kill and trying to think, it's like, okay, 4.5 million. How are we gonna do this for 4.5 million? There's the car chases, here's the this, here's the that, and all the things that are happening. And then I was able to put scenes back in that I had cut out for the film because we weren't going to be able to afford it. The film was like, well, this scene can go back in. Gunfight back in the screen, back in the story. And so
the alien invasion,
all that stuff. So that was one of the fun things that I enjoyed, is being able to not worry about budget.
Yeah. Can I add to that? And before I got on, when Dave invited me on this panel, I wanted to make sure that I could provide something of value, being, again, the guy that has no comic. And I'm so glad you asked this question, because it really spoke to what I really wanted to impress upon anybody here, is because I was thinking about it, and this is comics to films, and I was like, okay, but why? And it's, because we want to make a movie. But why? It's because you have a story to tell. It's like everybody here is in this room. I'm going to speak for everybody, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But everybody here is in this room because you have a story to tell. And I just, don't sell yourself short on, don't pigeonhole yourself into how you sell the short. I love movies. If I had the budget, I would make a ginormous epic Western movie. Instead, I'm going to make a ginormous epic Western TV show. But first, you got to get the story out there. And as much as I love comics, I'm not going to tell anybody here, don't make comics and don't hire these people. Hire these people to make your comics. I'm going to do it. I'm going to hire these people to make the comic. But there's nothing cheaper than a comic than a novel. And then you can write as many of those. And then who knows? Maybe you make an epic movie or a whole series. I've seen a lot of great stories blown because they tried to pigeonhole that into 2 hours when they could have made an amazing 11 season run of a show. So don't pigeonhole yourself. Don't sell yourself short. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, I think some of it was kind of touched on. Just piggybacking off the last question, are there certain formats or certain, could every screenplay and every TV show fit as a graphic novel? Or are there certain things that you think kind of stay away, this should not be one, this should be one?
Musicals are not great. Right? If you think hard about that question, there's certain silent movies you can do. I always say no. There's no such thing, because comic books are every genre. I remember if you didn't have ideas, we used to put every genre in a hat, a little piece of paper, throw it in a hat, and pick out werewolf, Western. sci-fi. And like, oh, okay, I can come up with a story about that. You know, it's like, it's that kind of thing. But I will say musicals are the tough one. It's the one that I always laugh. I'm like, it never, it doesn't work. You know? Yeah.
All right, let's get another question in. Yeah, right there. Watch the cube of power.
While we're waiting for your question, I wanted to ask you guys about soundtracks, because you talked about soundtracks. I was doing the same thing while I was converting. I would play music that I wanted in the film to be in the soundtrack, and so I did a little thing that I don't know if anyone else has done. I haven't seen it before. I don't know why not. So in my graphic novel, I put, you can put the song there. It's like, okay, Tears for Fears, everybody wants to rule the world. But I put a QR code there that sends it to YouTube music video. So you can literally listen to the soundtrack that's supposed to play in that scene to make it cinematic. And
yeah, we did a
okay.
We did a Kickstarter where I gave the book to a composer, and he created a so they could download it, or if somebody wanted an actual physical CD, they got it with the Kickstarter. So he did, the guy Hans Carl, he's terrific, but he's starting out, and he's just like, "Do you need a soundtrack for your comic?" I was like, that's interesting. He did a great job. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, last question.
Hello. So I'm actually coming in from a different direction. I'm an animator. I'm co-founder of a local animation studio, and kind of going on the question of Kickstarter and crowd fundraising. Now, we did run a successful small-scale Kickstarter campaign, but most of the success was from like my personal connections through the universities and conventions and stuff that I've come for, or my own connections. My question is, how do you extend your outreach? So like in social media, like we have social media, but it's such a,
Oh no, we finally run out? We can hear you. Go ahead, nice and loud.
I have a nice loud voice. There's such a saturation of material on social media that it's easy to get drowned on there. How do you extend your outreach so that those beyond your own personal circle and maybe the circle after, the next ring after that, how do you get that kind of publicity for your projects to have a more higher scale successul project?
To raise money for them?
Exactly.
You want us to go down the line since we each done our thing? Yeah, I'll start then. I don't know, it's hard. Social media is hard, and I don't really like it, even though I'm on there. Yeah, because I always forget, like, I need to do social media. I guess I should do something. And I actually, in addition to not just social media, I put an email list together and then started a monthly newsletter from Tony Armour and from my website. So I have my website, I started a newsletter, and I started emailing from the newsletter because I know from the film festival that we get more ticket sales from sending emails in our newsletter than we do from social media promotion. And so the email was really important to me to put that out there. And then it was really just, promoting on social media and LinkedIn and everything else, and it then becomes, friends and family, and people see it and hear about it, even people I don't know. And it's just work, really, is what it boils down to, is just how much time are you willing to put in and keep putting it out there. And if you can get some kind of, press on it for some reason, what's interesting about it,
Solve a murder. I don't know, do something to be famous. It's really tough. You have to interact with people. You have to be able to listen to crazy people and interact. But again, whatever it is, if your animation is a genre or something, find the people that like that genre. Get them to talk about it. Tease images. Tease some animation. Make videos of you guys working in the studio. Let people get into your world. And when they get to know you, get into your world, then they want to back whatever you're doing. So it's very important. You have to open the door. And again, not everyone is built for this, okay? And that's the reality of it. If you're Italian, you have 45 cousins, guilt them all to death. You know what I mean? Like, get every family member that you ever had. But it really is. You just have to kind of keep beating at it. And you do get lost. There's so much going on, and there's so many people selling so many things. It is easy to be intimidated and not do it. But you just gotta turn your head a different way and just put it out there. Don't worry about it. Let them decipher it. Artists are great because they can keep posting their art. Writers can comment on things. I have a rule: stay positive. If you don't like something, you could say, "This isn't my thing, but I'm really happy other people enjoy it." That sentence is so powerful because nobody can terrorize you after that. You're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I get it." So your language on your social media has everything to do with it. But share the images, share what you do, open up your world, don't tell them where you live.
We're out of time, but if you, well, I mean, I was gonna say.
We actually have no more panels after this.
Yeah,
one,
so if you guys want to.
People can talk as long as they want. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as long as the panelists want to keep talking, they can keep talking.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not the person you want to talk to about social media. Mostly it's like you, and I'll go away. But I do want to make a point since the sensibility here is you've got a lot of screenwriters looking into comics. And one of the things that I encounter with people who are doing screenplays is they're stymied by trying to get their scripts shorter. What can you cut out? What can you cut out? And I think if you look at graphic novels or comics, the space between the panels is called the gutter. And you as a writer want to have your audience fill in as much content in that gutter as you can possibly trust them to fill in without losing your story. A quick example, if someone says, God, I was working hard all day and I skipped lunch, I'm starved. Okay, we're set up. We're going to go to a restaurant. Do we need to see them walking down the driveway, get in the car? Do we need to see the trip? Did they have them flip off somebody in road rage incident? Or do we see them in the parking lot as they pull into the restaurant? And then you say, oh, wow, yeah, I can leave out all that stuff. And then you push it a little harder, and it's like, well, do we have to see them eat? Is that helping the story? Does it matter what they have for dinner? Maybe we see them walking out of the restaurant. There's a sign that clearly identifies it as a restaurant.
Well, you can eat on the window.
You can eat, yeah, exactly.
There you go.
So the point is, you can leave out, work hard to leave out stuff and trust your audience. Make them fill it in. And it engages the audience. And this works for a screenplay as well as for a graphic novel, but it's really clear in graphic novels. Boy, what can I have the audience fill in that gutter that makes logical sense, and it also keeps them involved? So instead of using me as your social media guru, try to fill your gutter.
I want to try to answer your question though, because you're, but I need to qualify it, if I may. So when you said small amounts on Kickstarter, how much are you? What is the small amount? And then what is the amount that you're thinking about trying to raise?
Well, so we were working on a TV pilot that we actually just finished. But we raised some money on Kickstarter, but I only asked for $3,000, and we did succeed in that because
it's
the 100. Yeah. So something that was a realistic amount, and then we funded the rest ourselves.
So what were you trying to get? What are you trying to get?
Oh, it was more like just knowing for future reference, like what we do to help build up for like the next time we run a Kickstarter.
Well, but did you have a figure in mind, or?
Well, I mean, I know with a lot of like TV pilots and animated shorts and stuff, you have like 50K or 100K or even like 10K. So I wasn't sure, like, just in pre-prep of trying to basically grow an audience so that those kind of numbers are feasible in the future.
Yeah, so the reason why I wanted to try to tackle this is because I get a lot of people ask me about that, because I raised $175,000 on Kickstarter and then another $70,000 after that post Kickstarter in pre-orders. So I get this question a lot.
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people who they set a goal at like 50,000 and they may get 10 or 12. And then they'll be like, oh, maybe I need to set it at 15 or 12 or whatever. And then they raise like 3. And this gentleman made a point, and I forgot your name, I'm sorry. Jimmy. So Jimmy made a really good point. I'm going to reinforce it. And you just got to put in the effort. But there's also time. Like you gotta decide, like, do you want to put in like a lot of effort? It's not, even if you put in a lot of effort in a week, it's not going to happen. And some people think, well, I'll put in effort for 3 months. It's not going to happen. You got to put in a lot of effort for like a year to grow your audience. And like he was saying, you want to use what's already out there. We call them platforms, like other people's podcasts or audiences. You want to tap into all those audiences you can. But if you are limited to your circle, and you don't have that, and you don't have any pedigrees or validations to get you out there, then you just kind of have to pay for it. Okay, and that's the thing is like I had an opportunity to pay for vetted hot leads. They weren't warm leads. They certainly weren't cold leads. We spent $1 per lead to build a email list, and these were hot leads. People who clicked on a thing that said, "I definitely want to know when your Kickstarter launches because I definitely want to back it." And we ended up importing that email list into our pledge manager, which is BackerKit. And they came back to us and they're like, "Are you sure that you know all these people? Is this not spam?" Because we had 100,000 emails, okay, at $1 a lead. So there's the math, all right? Now, of those very hot leads, we had 1% conversion, okay? So, like, you're gonna have to pay for it, and you better have pledges in place where they can actually cover your investment. But if you were nobody like me going into this, and what I mean by that is like you're just limited to your circle, and you're trying to reach out to the global market, and you can't for whatever reason use platforms, and you want to launch this in the next year, you just have to pay for it. That's it. It's because it's gonna cost something. But even then, you're still gonna have to like follow up with these people. You're still gonna have to put in the work and all that. But that's it.
Well, let me do this. So first of all, let's give the panelists a hand. This is our last panel of the day. So we're going to take a quick picture together, and then after that, if you do have further questions, please come up and ask your questions or at least say hi. So thanks for coming, and we'll do more panels tomorrow. See you then. Get everyone together. Olivia, can you take our picture?
Hey man, can I ask you where you got that?
About the lightning.
Oh yeah. Is that like Amazon or something? Or? I'm awesome because I film a lot of music videos, like concerts.